GOP colleagues, Senator Tim Scott and Congressman Trey Gowdy, have a new book about their unlikely friendship called Unified, which is more than I can say for the country right now. Please welcome Trey Gowdy, and joining us via satellite in Washington, Tim Scott. The FBI raided the home and the office of Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, as you know, right? So could Stormy Daniels and the Access Hollywood tape take him down, even though there's a Russian investigation? Do you think this is even more scary for Trump?
I don't know. I've seen the media reports about what people are speculating that they're looking for. I kind of go back to my old job. A federal judge had to find that there was probable cause to authorize the FBI to look for potential criminality.
Right.
Now, it's a different standard between convicting and searching. So I guess I'm old-fashioned. I want to wait and see what they find. I get that people like speculating. I'd rather wait and see what they find and then try to match it up with the elements of a crime.
Well, and you're speaking as a former federal prosecutor, just like myself. And we're hearing, though, a lot of Republicans saying, listen, this investigation needs to be wrapped up. It needs to be, completed. And there's talk of firing Bob Mueller, Rod Rosenstein. But let's face it, the Benghazi investigation took over 2 years, spent over $7 million of taxpayer money. It was given time.
Yes, ma'am.
Shouldn't this investigation be given time?
Absolutely. I have said from day one, you should have a fair, objective prosecutor, which I think Bob Mueller is, and you should give him the time, the resources, and the independence to do his job. And I have said that even when it was a little lonely to say that on my side of the aisle. I'm an executive.
Is it less lonely now?
You know what? I don't know what he's finding. And just like with Michael Horowitz and the Inspector General, I don't know what witnesses are telling him. And I'm not supposed to know. I just have to trust their professional objectivity, that if they're finding evidence and they're finding witnesses, look, we all want things to be done quickly, particularly if you may be the target or the suspect in an investigation. You want speed. But I just don't think Horowitz or Mueller are on a political calendar. I think they're following the evidence.
Okay. Well, Senator Scott, welcome.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody's doing fantastic out there. Y'all look good on TV.
Oh, thank you. Well, Senator, a group of bipartisan senators introduced legislation to protect Bob Mueller's job. Do you think it'll pass?
It'll definitely pass without any question. I hope that it's not necessary, but the truth of the matter is it is in the public's best interest for us to not only continue the investigation, but allow it to lead where it goes and then to finish the investigation. That's how we restore confidence for the American people in the government, is to make sure that investigations that provide information and bring things to light actually finishes.
Doesn't the president have to sign off on a bill like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think he will?
Well, there is a 2/3 majority at least in both bodies, perhaps a 3/4 majority, who want this investigation to be completed. So I believe that we'll finish the investigation. If there was ever a need for us to have the 3/4 invoke our privilege and responsibility as lawmakers, we would have that as well. So I'm very confident that we will find out what Mueller has been able to find, and make sure that the American people see it as well.
You know, Congressman Gowdy, you've announced you're retiring. I'm very, very, very sad about this. I wish you would have called me beforehand, make that decision. You said you actually don't have a lot to show for the last 7 years in Congress. I didn't understand what you meant by that.
Well, I'm going to have a troubled marriage if I repeat that, because my wife told me not to ever say that again. I have great relationships on both sides of the aisle. I never would have met my co-author, Tim Scott, had it not been for the past 8 years. But I'm just more comfortable, and I think I was a little bit better in a courtroom than I have been in Congress. Relationships, for sure. Been part of some investigations that were well known. But I would look back on my time as a prosecutor and take more, I think I did more public service there than I've done the last 8 years.
It sounds like in your book you thought that politics were much dirtier than you thought they would be.
There is more civility in a death penalty trial than there is in politics. And I mean that, because there's a referee, there's a judge, and there are rules of evidence, and there's relevance. And unfortunately, sometimes in politics, the objective is simply to win. And as you know, as a former prosecutor, that is not the objective. The objective is to work for a blindfolded woman holding a set of scales. And that was a really good client, and I want to go back to having her as a client.
You're not the only person Ryan stepping down. Paul Ryan announced yesterday he was stepping down. I maybe cried a little bit in my dressing room. I'm so heartbroken by all these people I admire leaving. What do you think it means for the Republican Party?
I think we're going through something of an identity crisis. You know, Paul was a free trader. Paul wrote, roadmaps to reform entitlement and things that our party's not talking about much right now. I am an unabashed fan of Paul Ryan's. I was actually a groupie. I wrote about it in the book. I went and got his autograph when I first got to Congress, which is not a cool thing to do, but I admire him on a professional and personal level, even if I don't agree with him on everything. He's just a wonderful person. I'm happy for him personally that he's leaving, actually. I'm just sad for our party and actually sad for the country that someone that smart is getting out of public service.
There's kind of a trend, though, I notice. After one of you Republicans leaves the party, he starts to speak out against the president. Bob Corker, Jeff Flake. Do you think Paul Ryan will, or will he continue to support the president the way he has been? I
think he's done a little bit of it. He did a little bit of it during the campaign and was criticized for it, particularly by some of the right-wing media outlets. They thought his speakership was in jeopardy. I don't think Paul will feel any more empowered now that he's leaving than he did when he was there. He's a measured guy no matter what, and I don't think he's going to be any more or less likely to speak out.
All right. Senator Scott, let's talk about your book also, Trey.
Yes, ma'am.
Called Unified. You described how you met 8 years ago as new members of Congress, and you both call it an unlikely friendship. Now, you're both from South Carolina, and you're both Republicans. Why is it unlikely?
Well, Joy, you just... Well, perhaps there's more below the surface. The reality of it is that where we grew up as kids, we would not have been able to play together. We would not have been able to drink from the same water fountains, to go to the same restaurants, or stay at the same hotels. So in South Carolina, over the last 50 years, so much has changed to the point that when I ran for Congress, I literally had to beat Strom Thurmond's son and the namesake of our most popular governor, Carroll Campbell's son, as well. And so it was unlikely as we both arrived in Congress, and if you had a chance to take a look at our high school transcripts, you would say, wow, they made it to Congress? It would be a little surprising as well. So, but beyond that, the challenges of a provocative history on race in our state really would have precluded us from being able to be on the same cover of the same book, but so much has changed that I wanted to have a way to highlight that and talk about why it became so important to me in the aftermath of the Emmanuel church shooting in Charleston, when Dylan Roof walked into that church wanting to start a race war. And the first person that I turned to was Trey Gowdy, a white guy from the same state. And I realized about 3 weeks later how much had changed in my state and in my own world, that a guy who wanted to start a race war actually led to unifying our state and helping to bring down the Confederate flag.
That's right. That's right. Senator Scott, you met with President Trump after he blamed both sides for the violence in Charlottesville last summer. And you said he's not a racist, just racially insensitive. I just don't understand that statement, because my husband is from Haiti, and this president called people from Haiti people from S-hole. I don't understand the difference between being racist and so racially insensitive that you would say things like that.
Well, Mia Love is also a descendant of Haitian parents and a child of Haitian parents, and had a very strong response to that, as well as she should have. My response to the comments of the president after Charlottesville, I found them to be divisive and indefensible, and I said so. The good news is the White House reached out to me to have a conversation about race, the history of race, and where we're going as a country. And the president and I did not find ourselves on the same side of that conversation, and we won't be in the future. That's one of the reasons why I said he was racially insensitive. However, when he asked me for solutions and remedies to move this nation forward, I went to the place where we could find common ground, which was a policy discussion around bringing more money into distressed communities, because as a kid who was raised by a powerful single mother living in a distressed community, we can debate the rhetoric, but I want real tangible results manifesting in communities of color and communities of poverty immediately. And we were able to partner on legislation that moved us forward. And
it's a good story. It's a good story. People should read the book. Thanks to Senator Tim Scott and Representative Trey Gowdy. Members of our audience are going home with a copy of their book. Uniform. We'll be right back.
We will not waver in our commitment to see that justice is done for this terrible act in Benghazi. And make no mistake, justice will be done. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. We're investigating exactly what happened. But my biggest priority now is bringing those folks to justice. That was the President of the United States over a year ago. No one has been arrested. No one has been prosecuted. No one has been brought to justice. We don't even have access to the witnesses. You in the media were good enough for my 16 years as a prosecutor not to tell me how to do my job. And so far in Congress, y'all have been good enough not to tell me how to do my job. I'm not telling you how to do your job. But I'm going to ask you some questions. And if you can't answer these questions, then I'll leave you to draw whatever conclusion you want to draw about whether or not the media has provided sufficient oversight. Can you tell me why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi the night that he was killed? Do you know? Does it bother you whether or not you know why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi? Do you know why we were the last flag flying in Benghazi after the British had left and the Red Cross had been bombed? Do you know why requests for additional security were denied? Do you know why an ambassador asking for more security days and weeks before he was murdered and those requests went unheeded? Do you know the answer to why those requests went unheeded? Do you know why no assets were deployed during the siege? And I've heard the explanation, which defies logic, frankly, that we couldn't have gotten there in time. But you know, they didn't know when it was going to end. So how can you possibly cite that as an excuse? Do you know whether the president called any of our allies and said, can you help? We have men under attack. Can you answer that? Do any of you know why Susan Rice was picked? The Secretary of State did not go. She says she doesn't like Sunday talk shows. That's the only media venue she does not like, if that's true. Why was Susan Rice on the 5 Sunday talk shows? Do you know the origin of this mythology that it was spawned as a spontaneous reaction to a video? Do you know where that started? Do you know how we got from no evidence of that to that being the official position of the administration? In conclusion, Congress is supposed to provide oversight. The voters are supposed to provide oversight. And you were supposed to provide oversight. That's why you have special liberties, and that's why you have special protections. I am not surprised that the President of the United States called this a phony scandal. I'm not surprised that Secretary Clinton asked, what difference does it make? I'm not even surprised that Jay Carney said Benghazi happened a long time ago. I'm just surprised at how many people bought it.